Hello everyone, my name's Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT16, and BT16 offers us lots of new and powerful tools in order to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the latest iteration of the Insectoid deck. So Insectoids is, well, kind of a classic green style deck where it just wants to do the very simple thing on beating up your opponent's Digimon. So it does this by wanting to suspend the opponent's Digimon down, have ways to increase your DP to be able to hit higher numbers to ensure that you're going to be able to beat up their Digimon, and the new tools that Insects and Bugs got only help this type of strategy even more with the ability to even redirect attacks. So this is going to be a really strong and powerful build because it also has some nice built-in protection, as well as being able to suspend themselves as a nice sub-theme, so that way you have even more ways to get benefits off of all of your different cards. The biggest weakness of the deck is the fact that it is kind of vulnerable to option-based removal, so those are the biggest weaknesses of the deck, on top of the fact that depending on your build, it might have a little bit of a harder time closing out games, but it's still a really fun and powerful deck, and it's looking to be one of the better decks out of BT16. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile and see what we're working with. So starting off with the Digitamas, I'm just going to be running 4 of the only Digitama that the deck needs, which is Modimon. So BT15 Modimon has this important inheritable ability where at the end of your turn, if this Digimon is an Insectoid trait, then it gets to attack the opponent's Digimon. So this is really important, so that way we could Digivolve and be able to attack in the same turn, even if the memory passes over onto the opponent's side, giving us basically pseudo blitz. Then, when it comes to the level 3s, I'm running a pretty fair and well-rounded level 3 package. In terms of some of the optional tech, that's going to be 2 copies of Lotmon just to be able to give our Digimon Alliance, and the DP boost is also pretty helpful when our Digimon are suspended, which they're going to be 90% of the time, ideally. Then I'm going to be running 2 copies of the BT9 Pamumon just as a floodgate to try to stop the opponent from playing Digimon by card effects. We do have to note that this does impact us, so before we do some of our combos that do play Digimon by card effects, we want to make sure we could get off of this card, which we could do easier than the opponent at times, either just by swinging or Digivolving on top of it. Then I'm also going to be running, in terms of the main line in-engine stuff, 4 copies of Kokabuterimon. So Kokabuterimon is going to be the deck's dedicated digging or searching tool for our Insectoid traded Digimon. Then it also has that same inheritable ability as Lotmon, just another way to be able to give our Digimon some extra DP during all turns. Then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Tentomon. So Tentomon is really decent because he's going to be suspending one of the opponent's Digimon down, and we get to DP boost one of our Digimon, so that way our Digimon are going to innately be stronger than the opponent's, ideally, and this buff lasts until the end of the opponent's turn, so it goes a full cycle into that DP buff, making it that much harder for the opponent to deal with our Digimon. Then he also has a nice inheritable ability that also triggers during all turns. When this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle, we just get to gain some extra memory, which is another classic green thing on, rewarding us for beating up the opponent's Digimon. Then, when it comes to the level 4s, I'm just going to be keeping it simple and just running some of the best Insectoid level 4s that we have. So, I'm going to be running 4 copies of the brand new Blade Kawagamon. So, this is one of the most, if not the most important level 4, because, again, it's helping with some of our DP boosting, making sure that our Digimon are going to be as strong as possible. And then we have different flexible ways on how we could utilize it, having this ability be on play and when Digivolve. Then it also has that same inheritable ability to just give our Digimon some extra DP, so it helps us reach even higher numbers. Then I'm going to be running 4 copies of the promo Kuwagamon. So the rest of these level 4s are kind of optional. I just like the promo Kuwagamon because it has that inheritable ability to DP boost our Digimon even further, but it also has a nice flexibility again with on play and when digivolving. This time having one of the opponent's Tamers unable to unsuspend during their turn. So it really just tries to help lock down some of the opponent's cards that are already suspended. Then the last 2 champions I'm going to be using are 2 copies of the BT15 Kabuterimon. He has some built-in protection that's basically doing exactly the same type of protection that a lot of our other cards have while this Digimon is suspended. And with all of our different DP boosts, we can make a relatively large level 4 Digimon and try to sit on that and bait some of the opponent's plays out. Then on top of that, it also has a nice inheritable ability that we saw with our Tentomon, again allowing us to gain some extra memory when our Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle. But if you're wondering what are some other possible level 4s, just because I do know the promo Kuwagamon is a little bit on the expensive side, here's just an extensive list as far as other really decent level 4s that you could think about running, both in archetype and out of archetype. And then when it comes to the level 5s, I'm just going to be, again, running a pretty simple, well-rounded Insectoid lineup of 4 copies of Metal Life Kuwagamon as the most important level 5. So, again, it has that on-play when digivolving flexibility on how we could use the card, doing exactly the same thing as our Blade Kuwagamon, giving our Digimon some extra DP, and we get to suspend a Digimon down. Then, the most important factor of this card outside of his native effect is his inheritable, where during the opponent's turn, when an opponent's Digimon attacks, we could switch the target to one of our suspended Digimon with Insectoid in its traits. So it basically is giving our Digimon blocker, except not really blocker because it doesn't apply that keyword. It's just allowing us to have a good alternative defense to take advantage of our Digimon's extra large DP to not only aggress onto them, but to prevent them from aggressing onto us. Then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of Rhino Kabuterimon. Again, this is kind of a tech or flex spot. It is optional, but I do like what it's doing just because it can help make digivolving into some of our Insectoid level 6s a little bit easier, just because it has a nice when attacking ability, where if this card has a Digimon with Hybrid or Insectoid in its traits in its Digivolution source, then I could Digivolve into an Insectoid or 10 Warrior traded Digimon from our hand for a memory cost of 3. So it just allows us to try to make it going up into some of our other stacks a little bit easier. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Mega Kabuterimon Ace, just because it's, well, an Ace Digimon, and it's an archetype Ace Digimon that's still pretty decent for what the deck is trying to do. Again, being an Ace, it has that hand counterblast Digivolution, with the downside of Overflow as the balancing tool. But what this card is doing for the deck is his on-play and when digivolving ability to give one of our Digimon plus 3000 DP until the end of the opponent's turn, and then if their Digimon is attacking, we get to switch the target of that attack to this Digimon, again, allowing us to have some good alternative defensive lines of play, especially if we're sitting on a level 4 that they might not be able to deal with. Then he even has a nice all turns ability where when this Digimon is suspended, it isn't affected by the effects of the opponent's Digimon, having that same level of protection that we saw with that Kabuterimon, and that's kind of the running protection of this deck. And then when it comes to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Tyrant Kabuterimon. So Tyrant is the main level 6 of the deck and the most important card in the entire deck. So yes, he is a little bit on the expensive side to digivolve up into normally, but we could use him like a level 7 if we really wanted to digivolve him on top of a level 6 to make him a little bit more cheaper. But he does come with some very hefty stats and some very strong abilities, where when we digivolve up into him, we get to play an Insectoid or Larva traded card from our hand and reduce the play cost by 8. So it allows us to spawn an extra body, which is really good at trying to help flood the field, but it wants to take advantage of that second body, where at the end of your turn, once per turn, by suspending one of your other Digimon, which ideally he just played, we could return one of the opponent's Digimon with as much DP as that suspended Digimon to the bottom of their deck. Then he even has a nice All-Turns ability where while he's suspended, he isn't affected by the opponent's Digimon's abilities. So again, it really limits how they're going to be interacting with him, while he's just a big body to take advantage of all of the buffs on the opponent and even remove some of the opponent's Digimon by card effects as well. Then I'm going to be running 3 copies of Grand Kawagamon Ace as just another Ace Digimon. This time we want to utilize this card mostly in combination with Tyrant because Tyrant can play him out for free. On top of the hand Counterblast Digivolution, he has some really good abilities that we want to take advantage of. Again, his on-play and when Digivolving suspends 2 of the opponent's Digimon or Tamer cards, which is nice because we can start hitting the opponent's back row and try to impact them that way. And then cards that are suspended utilizing this ability can't unsuspend during the opponent's next unsuspend phase, and then we get to delete one of their suspended Tamers, also adding in a little bit of Tamer hate on top of the ability to just try to stop the opponent's extra aggro. Then he even has a nice secondary ability where during your turn once per turn, when this Digimon becomes suspended, one of your Digimon gains security attack +1 for the turn, allowing us to try to have a way to be able to deal extra damage onto the opponent. And then the last level 6 could kind of just be whatever you feel like you want it to be. I'm just going to be using Hercules Kabuterimon because, again, it's not a bad Digimon to have, because at the start of our main phase and when we Digivolve up into it, we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon, and then one of our Digimon gains Piercing for the turn, allowing us to actually deal damage when we're trying to delete the opponent's Digimon that we're attacking into. Then he even has an all-turns ability that's basically the same protection that we saw with a lot of our other cards. And then when it comes to the Tamers, I'm just going to keep it simple and run 3 copies of the BT16 Izzy. So Izzy is going to be the deck's dedicated memory setting tamer, so that way we're always at least at 3 memory in order to make our plays as efficient as possible. Then he also has an ability that triggers during the opponent's turn, where when an opponent's Digimon attacks, by suspending this tamer, we could switch the target of that attack to one of our suspended Digimon with Insectoid in its traits, so that way we have an alternative way to be able to block the opponent outside of our Metal Life Kawagamon's inheritable ability. And then when it comes to the options, you can kind of customize the options based on how you feel. I personally like having as much consistency as possible, so I'm just going to be running the classic consistency package of 4 copies of Agility Training and 2 copies of Memory Boost. They basically fulfill almost the same role on just looking at some of the top cards of our deck, adding green cards from among them into our hand, and then they're setting up the delay ability to basically use for 2 extra memory, whether we're actually gaining that memory or reducing the cost of our Digivolution, depends on which option you're using, but that 2 memory could really help make some of our plays climbing up our stages. Then I'm going to be running 1 copy of Hidden Potential Discovered because why not? There's no real downside to running this card, so we might as well play the 1 copy we're allowed. So it's just allowing us to Digivolve up into our higher stages a little bit more efficiently, especially since Tyrant costs a lot already on base if we're just using him off of a level 5. And then the last option of the deck is going to be the Big Heart Removal, which again can be anything you want. I'm just going to be utilizing Shine of B because it's a pretty decent removal option that's also helping DP boost our Digimon as well. But for the most part, that's it for my interpretation of the deck. There is lots of room for customization based on what you have access to, what you feel like you want to play, the abilities you're prioritizing, and the meta that you're expected to play against. And as far as some of the other useful cards, we do just have lots of different tech and tools, both in archetype and in color, to mix and match to figure out what you actually want to be playing and what is going to be the best for the meta that you're expected to play against. So it's always good to think of all of the other tools that you can incorporate into the deck to really spice it up and make it your own. And then the deck is even going to be getting some potential future upgrades, both in promo form and in potential future sets. So it's not like sitting on this deck is going to be a very bad investment.